Hey everyone, so here's an exercise for you today that you can practice on your own or with other people. So this is how to generate commonalities. So a commonality being highlighting that you have something in common with the other person or people in order to build connection and comfort. Really handy tool because you can do it very early on in the situation. So for example, if you're selling something to someone and it's like a business type situation, this can be a really good tool because you can generate comfort really quickly. If you're chatting someone up in a nightclub, same thing. Any scenario where it's a short time frame that you get to build connection, this is really useful. Also useful outside of that. Additionally, this exercise is also helpful just for generating stories. And as usual, remember, probably even more so than the direct use of these exercises, is that they train your brain just to be faster and better at social skills. That's the main benefit. I honestly believe that over time, you get physically better at generally socializing because of neuroplasticity. Look it up if you haven't looked it up before. So this is where your neurons change to adapt more. My slowest day now is way faster than my fastest day was 5 years ago. So now onto the exercise. So first we want a bunch of random topics. So you can use a random word generator. You can also just do something like look around you or watch a movie and what comes up. Random word generator will give a pretty varied range of things. Once you get a bit faster, you can practice in a conversation. Remember, with all of these exercises, any conversation based anyway, it's always easiest first to practice in a slow text conversation. So that's a text conversation where there's like half an hour or hours between replies, not one where it's there and now you're both talking. You get literally thousands of times more time to think. Also, you can look back on conversations you've just had, analyze them and think, how could you have implemented this? So first we need a bunch of random topics, right? They need to be kind of like things, I don't know all the different terms of nouns, pronouns, whatever, but things that are like places or things you can do, something like that. Obviously the word the or and is going to be difficult for this. So we find a random topic and then we reference some kind of experience that we've had with it and add a little bit of detail. So it wants to be somewhat interesting. So for example, someone says to me they're from Colombia. I can say to them, okay, I went to Colombia in 2016 to the Amazon, and then elaborate a bit on what it was like in the Amazon. Someone says to me that for a living, they sell houses. So back to that, I could say, I also have a large experience of sales myself, but due to running my own business over the years, and I learned about sales, here's what I learned. So I've elaborated a bit on my experience. Final example, someone says to me that they play a lot of computer games. I might say that I actually made a computer game when I was 17 about this rabbit, and you have to jump over different things and go through the seasons of the year to find your girlfriend. It's called The Adventures and Habits of Nature and Rabbits. If anyone wants to play it, please email me. So these are just 3 different examples. Those are all quite easy examples for me, right? So now let's choose a bit of a harder one for myself. So someone says to me that they're a chef. I have almost no experience of cooking whatsoever. So a bad way to do this might be to say, oh really, I also like eating food. So that example has such a small level of involvement that it's very likely to actually do more harm than good. So instead of that, what I can do is say something like, at one point I watched so much of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares on my friend's account that it turned up in their search history, in their recommended searches for months afterwards. So that's me using something that's a bit different directly to cooking. Here's 2 ways you can cheat a bit if you have absolutely no involvement with the topic whatsoever. So the country, Bahrain, is a small island country, I believe, in between Saudi Arabia and Iran, I think. You can Google Maps me if you're from that area. You might be either agreeing or screaming at the screen. But whatever, I didn't know even that country existed until recently. My friend, who's in the Navy, went there and he had a propeller break down on his ship, so he had to stay there for an extra amount of time. So if someone brought that up in a conversation, the country Bahrain, they're from there, they went there, something like that, they heard about it. Instead of citing my own involvement, I can reference someone who's relevant to me, my friend, and then talk about his experience. So it's not quite as strong in terms of the connection that you build as if it was about yourself, but it still works. Second thing you can do is mention something that's similar but not exactly the same. So I might say, I haven't been to that part of the world, I want to. I did go to a different Islamic country, which was Turkey, and it was interesting hearing the call to prayer several times a day. So I've referenced something that we could argue is similar because it's another Islamic country, and through that we can still create a commonality to some extent. If it's too weak, it might backfire and make you look like you're saying something out of place, trying really hard to make a connection, not really understanding them. For example, my over-the-top bad example of if someone says they're a chef and you say back to that, oh yeah, me too, I also like eating food, we have so much in common. So we get our bunch of random topics and then we write down, so you can write these down and then you can write down next to them, and it's some kind of involvement that you've had. The more involved and the more it's you who's involved and the more interesting the experience is, the better. And then you can use this in real time eventually to create commonalities of people. As usual with exercises, the first stage would be writing them down. The second stage is writing them down and timing yourself and trying to challenge yourself to beat a certain amount of time, doing a certain number of randomly generated options. Then it would ideally be with speaking, so maybe you can do this out loud by yourself or in your head by yourself. If you're on your own, like on the bus, you don't need to suddenly blurt out your experience going to Bahrain or something on your own, but you can just do it in your head. But even better if you can teach it to a partner and you're doing it back and forth. The next stage would be that you're using it in a slow text conversation. So this is a conversation where the replies are tens of minutes or even hours apart. Then a faster text conversation, then in a real life scenario where things are kind of calm, is someone that you know and you're comfortable with. Then after that, you should be able to use it under pressure in a real situation. And don't forget also the value of backtracking and remembering a conversation from earlier once you've got home from whatever social event you're in, and thinking about what happened there and how you could have used this in different stages of time. And then you'll gradually start to get faster. If you think of how you could have done something in a social situation half an hour after it happened, that's still great. If next time you think of it 20 minutes after, you've got faster. And eventually you'll be able to cut that time down close enough to zero that you can use it on the spot. And you can also go into kind of like an inverse minus time where you do the thing and then you realize after that it was the thing that you were practicing eventually. That's when you fully naturalized it. So that's a good exercise for you guys to practice. Generate random options, random word generator, watch a movie, whatever. Reference experiences from your memories and stuff. Don't make things up because it makes things way too easy and not very useful. You can reference other people who are close to you who have had an experience or something similar if you can't think of anything. And then you created a commonality with your... So that's one of the exercises. Make sure to stay tuned to the emails and I'll be giving you guys more things you can practice on your own. My recommendation for exercises, by the way, is aim to just do minimum 5 minutes per day. Everyone has time for 5 minutes per day unless you're in a ridiculously extreme lifestyle of some kind. And if you do it at the start of the day, you're less likely to forget or procrastinate and then don't have energy by the end of the day. And in my opinion, the difference between nothing and 5 minutes is way more than the difference between 1 and 2 hours. It's just about doing like a bit consistently per day and keeping it fresh on your mind. And eventually you'll get to the point where you do this naturally. Anytime someone says anything, you've already generated an option just by instinct on how you can create a commonality and send it back to them to create comfort. Obviously, you don't always necessarily want to use it, but it's there as an option if you think it's a good idea. So stay tuned for more exercises for you to practice.